Hey guys, Ark here, bringing to you Chapter 2, Episode 8 of my Learning Night Elf series. This is going to be the first episode where we're actually on the Reforged client. Our first video on the Reforged client was the gameplay, Episode 2, but this will be the first Learning Night Elf series on the Reforged client itself. I have a couple thoughts of videos I'm going to be making, so we'll be doing a couple parts or a couple videos today. Potentially might actually be uploading all of them as well. I have a new what is it called? Fiber. I have new fiber internet, so like I upload really fast now, which is really cool. So we'll probably be hopefully increasing my video count here soon. Couple of things to get through. DreamHack Anaheim will be in about 2 weeks. So if you're in the area or something, feel free to stop by there. I will be there. Wish me luck for the tournament. This episode, we're going to be covering a particular strategy that has knocked me out of 2 tournaments so far. First one was from KiWiKaKi in Rising Star number 9, I want to say it was, or number 8. I lost to him. And then the second one was against Bazaar, who was actually one of the players in this game. That was in ESL Cup number 2, I believe. Bazaar is a friend of mine, so I was able to have him play a practice game with me afterwards to try out some different strategy. And I think this is the correct way to play it. I know that Kevin, another Night Elf player, had talked about this as well. I don't know if this is exactly his style for it, but essentially it all hinges on an early expansion. Just as we're getting loaded into the game and getting through it, essentially the strategy is a Farseer fast tech into headhunters / troll berserkers, or actually, what do they turn into? Tier 3 headhunters and shaman for bloodlust. So the heroes, you go Farseer TC as the orc, and so as the elf player, it's not very intuitive to me. Like the first time I played against KiWiKaKi, my expo timing was way later, and that was the game where I felt that early expansion is the easiest way to play against it. I did not really do that in my first game versus Bazaar, but in this practice game, I definitely go through it. So the first things I want to touch on, so I've gone through a couple of videos of Night Elf versus Orc, so definitely check those out if you're curious about my overall build. I'll be following my overall build pretty much the same. That's the generic Night Elf versus Orc opening if you're going for Keeper first. The one thing that I want to keep an eye on, so here's my Wisp Scout right here. So I will pause it once I see his base. So boom, right there. There's 2 things that I know from looking at this. One is that it's very likely he's going to be going for a Farseer, and 2, he's going to be going for a fast tech. The reason why I know the fast tech obviously is because there's no barracks. The reason why I can assume it's a Farseer is because if it was going to be a fast tech without barracks, with a Blade Master, 99% of the time you're going to have an item shop. Now, with that being said, if you do see an item shop here, most likely I would assume a Blade Master, because it's very typical for this map. That's a pretty common opening for Orc. But that's just one thing to keep in mind, that there's two large pieces of information that I took out of not seeing a shop here and not seeing a barracks. With that said, though, let's say that you don't know it's a Farseer. That's perfectly okay. So right here, this is not enough information to really change up my strategy. I will tell you exactly when I know. Right there. Right there is the exact moment where I know that my strategy is going to be deviating. Essentially, at this point, I'm still doing my normal build order. But now that I have 2 pieces of information, the fast tech plus the Farseer, you can't see my hands. Fast tech plus the Farseer, what I'm assuming is a headhunter tech. The reason why I assume a headhunter tech is mostly because it's kind of a trend right now, that's a common thing to see with a Farseer. The other side of it is if he goes grunts, I guess there's how do I explain this? So I'm not that worried about anything other than headhunters, I guess. I'll put it that way. It's not that I'm assuming headhunters, and I'd be surprised if it is. My strategy at that point, once I scouted this Farseer, is pretty much set in stone, because I know that the early expansion is going to be perfectly fine no matter what he does. and I think it's the best option against no matter what he does. Even if he's doing some all-in cheese tier 2 fortified tower rush or something, his fast tech means he's going to have a late barracks, not enough units, so you can overpower that push pretty easily. The fast expo is just very, very strong against any opening that he can do. The key is, though, is this harass. What you need to do is ensure that you don't lose too much to this harass while also being able to get your fast expo. So this is just a normal build order. I'm going to speed through this. So even though I'm speeding through it, this is definitely a very big key right here. So his harass did almost absolutely nothing. I had to just micro my wisp, and I was getting free experience during that time. To me, it's perfectly okay to use my detonates on those wolves, especially if you can get 2 of them. But if you can only get 1 of them, it's arguably okay, because it is a little difficult to get level 2 here without shutting down this harass hard. And the only way that you can really shut this harass down hard with a 1 archer and keeper is by using your wisp a little bit liberally. Plus, given that you're going to be staying at tier 1, I think it's okay. So I guess as the player trying to take something from this game, there's certain situations where it's okay to be a little bit more liberal with your wisp detonates, and certain situations where you don't want to be. Generally, if it's a level up that's going to be helpful in harassing, or if you need to shut down harass, or if it's okay for you to stay on tier 1 a little bit longer to rebuild your wisps, or even on tier 2 if you need to build a couple extra wisps. So always keep that in mind. Is 1, if you need to shut down a harass and the only way to do it is by using detonates, then it's not that big of a deal, because what you're going to gain by shutting his harass down is way more. The other side of that is, especially if you're at a position where you can rebuild those wisps, it's perfectly okay. It may suck during situations where you can't easily rebuild them, but just keep that in mind. So that was the example right there. I got level 2 off of it. He did try to deny it. Ultimately, it went more in my favor. And his harass is pretty much shut down because he has no wolves. He has this one in the base here, which is going to die pretty quickly, but he's got a low HP Farseer, and right now his harass is going to start up again. But I've effectively pushed him away from my base, and ultimately this is going to be a weird little chase that happens. But the key thing I want to touch on is this fast expo. So there's 2 pieces of information that, or 2 things that I chose to do at this point where I scouted the Farseer plus the fast tech. One of them was that I was going to prioritize archers. The reason why I wanted to prioritize archers is if we take a step back and think of the differences between a Farseer and a Blade Master. One, Blade Master is so much more efficient at killing the archers, and the Huntresses are there to kind of really act as like your main early game damage dealers and tanking and everything. On the flip side of that, though, as the Farseer, one, I'm assuming it's going to be headhunters. It doesn't necessarily have to be headhunters, but that's my assumption. If it's not headhunters, if he goes into grunts, archers are still perfectly okay because they have high DPS, and the Farseer is going to struggle pretty hard with actually taking them down, as long as you keep a front line of your trees and everything. Plus the fact that he fast tech means that his grunt count is going to be very low. So his ability to take care of your archers is going to be overall pretty low, at least until he gets to level 3. Given that he's harassing at the start, I know I don't have to really be worried about level 3, and at least until I've already been crept up and have secured my expo. The other side of that is I knew I needed to place my expo as soon as I could. So I'm staying tier 1 to both easily defend from the harass because it allows me to rebuild wisps, and 2, because I need to spend those resources to expo. Because I know that one of the most important things I wanted to do was early expo the second I saw his fast tech plus Farseer. So jumping on. I know I'm kind of like breezing through a lot of this, so I apologize if it's if I'm kind of overshadowing some of the other decision makings and everything. But what I'm trying to do is touch on what I believe are the key decision points and why I made those decisions. So since not to get too far down the line, but let's just recap again. So scouted, fast tech, no shop, which suggests Farseer. Didn't really need to make a call at that point. Wow, he's got a lot on his gold. So that's interesting. I didn't notice that. So The first whisk out, very important because it told me that something a little weird was happening. But if I saw the shop, that would have been a pretty normal opening for this map. So going into that, the whisk scout doesn't necessarily confirm anything yet. What did confirm, though, was that secondary scout. That is why the secondary scout is so important, because it saw his hero. If I did not see his hero, I would probably assume a Blade Master. And at that point, I would assume it would be a pretty standard game. And I would maybe not necessarily expo right away, but I would have really tried to figure out what his opening was, if it was a Blade Master or not. So the first whisk scout scouted something a little potentially weird. Second one was very important to scout his hero. So definitely you need to make sure you do those. Once you see the hero, then you can make the call, okay, I want to do a fast tech. Potentially you could even make the call before you even see his hero if that's just your opening strategy. Fast expoing is definitely a pretty common opening with more of a hunt transition, but I think it's very important with this headhunter build as well. So the hero is where I made the decision about the headhunters, about the fast expo plus the archers. So we're just going to speed through this a little bit. Essentially what we're doing is just a little ring around the rosy as I'm just trying to push him out, and he caught me a little off guard here and there, but I was able to force him to TP. Only a level 1 hero, so just didn't want to give up the experience. But now I have a bunch of archers, and I'm teching when I can, and going to be expoing when I can. Now, right here is very important as well. So my expo just finished. So there's two things that you could do. So I basically just pushed this Farseer back to his base, which meant that more than likely he was going to use this time to creep up now, because he built up a couple headhunters. If we take a look at his army, he's got 4 headhunters. It's time for his second hero as well. So he's going to be looking to creep up that second hero. There's two important creep camps on Echo Isles. And I say that's too important. I mean, there's a lot of them that are important, but the 2 that are key is in this middle of the map. The reason why it's key is because this is the only parts of the map that is not duplicated. So whoever creeps the middle will have an easy, not necessarily easier, but they'll have access to 2 creep camps that the other person could not get. So it's very important for me to try and get as much of this middle before I have to shrink back and hide on my side of the map. So I know that with this expo about to finish, I'm about to run back to my side of the map and creep up that side of the map. So during this time where it's still kind of just moving, I'm trying to uproot my tree of life and move it into position, and just time that I'm not really doing anything. That's why I want to run straight to either the item shop or the marketplace to creep one of those. I chose the marketplace because overall it's a pretty safe creep camp to do for Keeper of the Grove, because of this fact that you can just use force of nature on these trees right here and creep the item, and then this gives you a very easy pathway to escape. And it's also, if the creeps run towards you this direction, as opposed to if the orc was going to engage it, he would be right here and the creeps would get pulled this way. So we're basically completely opposite sides of it, so it's very safe for me to do it. So that's why I went here. So it's very important to consider, where are you going to spend time on the map. So we're going to speed through this. We're going to get our Tree of Life into position. I'm going to speed quite a bit past through this. Essentially, what I'm doing here is, as I hit tier 2, I'm going to get my second hero. Very important. Generally, it's going to be Alchemist because of his Acid Bomb and the Healing Spray. After this, I'm going to rebuild a couple wisps, and then I'm going to tech to tier 3. You may think this is a little bit weird, or I'm a little bit jumping the gun, but a key aspect of this strategy, or a key aspect of the strategy, is going tier 3 for that Bloodlust, as well as for the Tiny Great Hall. So I know for me, my army composition that I want to get to deal with this is basically Archer Mountain Giants. Now it may seem a little bit weird, but essentially Archers are your DPS. At tier 3, you're going to get access to the +4. What is that actually called? I can't even think of what it's actually called, but the other Archer upgrade that gives you a huge damage upgrade. It's going to give you access to the tier 3 upgrades, but then it's also going to give you access to really tanky mountain giants. And so that's ultimately my goal. And with the early expansion, it's very easy to get, I guess, the large mountain giant, or a large food count out of mountain giants with the archers. So from there, I'm just going to be unpausing, and essentially I got my expansion up. Really key here is once I've secured my expansion, basically I want to try and slow down his creeping more. So I knew that after this marketplace steal, he was going to have a little bit of a harder time getting to level 3. So I could make use of this time as I'm trying to get my economy back up to speed. And so I'm just doing a little bit of harassment, speeding through it. Again, I think the most important part is really the fast expo and the early text to tier 3, because you've got a sizable food count with archers, and then you want to supplement that with mountain giants. If you struggle getting to that point, I think obviously it's going to depend on the game and everything, but a key thing that you would want to look at is how good is your control getting to that point. Are you having any mechanical missteps, like is your build off, something like that. Definitely very important to put pressure on your opponent to slow down his creeping as well before he hits the berserker upgrade as well as bloodlust. But I would say the biggest thing to really improve on is really that build and getting to that point. If it's just strictly the fighting that you're struggling with, that's probably a pretty good sign that you're probably at a pretty high level already with it. So we're going to speed through this. I had some really favorable engagements, which pretty much set the tone for the rest of the game. So he gets some archers. He has level 2 chain lightning and everything. The TC was picked off at the creep jack. So I get a lot of good trades here. And really, I'm just trying to buy time for these ancient allures. They're going down. I'm halfway to tier 3. I'll be getting a third lore or a second lore right here. But ultimately, I'm just continuing archer production. And basically, because of this pickoff I just did, I knew it's going to be quite a while before he's ready to even push my base. More than likely, he's going to have Berserker and Bloodlust and the Tiny Great Hall, which he just placed right there. But I'm basically focusing on creeping up my second hero and securing items and upgrades for my Mountain Giant. So again, I'm going to go for a heavy Archer Mountain Giant army composition. And that's basically... The reason why that's so good, essentially, is the Mountain Giants are extremely tanky, 1600 HP. They have the armor upgrades, but then they also have Taunt, which all these units will get kind of... it makes it difficult for them to micro. But then they're also medium armor, so they take reduced damage from piercing and magic. So that's why they're so good with this. Plus, they also do siege damage when you grab a stick, so they can take down buildings very quickly, which is something that archers really lack. So we're going to kind of speed through this. Essentially, I think I've covered all that I really wanted to cover with this. So we won't go through the end of the game with this. So just to recap. Most important thing is identify with your Whisk Scout what is happening. So we scouted something, a fast tech without a shop. Potentially had a shop hidden, but we know it was a fast tech. So we know that could mean quite a few different things. We didn't know exactly yet, though, until we had the secondary scout figure out what hero he had. So the Farseer scout with the fast tech, we knew that we were going to go for a fast expansion of some type. Or a fast expansion, because we wanted to secure that early game economic advantage. So at that point, we knew that all we had to do was shut down his harass as best as we could, and we could transition this into a very favorable outcome. At that point, with the early expansion, we got it into position while we were creeping a camp that was very important to him. This was if he had crept this entire creep camp here, he probably would have been level 3 at this point right here. So that's why it's so important to consider what your opponent needs and try and take that away from him. So I think, guys, that pretty much does it for what I wanted to cover in this video. So we'll call it quits here. Thank you guys for tuning in, and feel free to make suggestions down below as well for videos you'd like to see covered. Take care now. Bye.